Brad, how do you feel about the NBA Finals matchup?
Well, one, I actually love it. I
I
think it's
love it.
so awesome.
I
I
think it's
love people are mad.
everyone's mad at everything all of the time.
Everyone's always mad. It's like this is such a breath of fresh air. It's
It's
like you hear people complain all year about how the NFL is so much more popular than the NBA,
yeah,
and now they're trying to adopt more of a format that would allow any team to get a chance to play,
parody.
and now people are also mad about that.
Yeah. Now it's the flip the other way where I need superstars and I need big markets. It's like who?
What giant loser watches games based on the market value of the teams?
Yeah.
OKC, Indiana. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but I'm not that excited for these NBA finals. I joke that Colin is the elitist here on the show, but maybe it's me. Because, if I were the NBA, I would have changed its motto to give me super teams or give me death. Because that's what I like. I like superstars in the NBA finals, and we don't really have that.
That particularly for all of us watching this video, Blazer fans, I think it's a great sign, first of all, that teams with a small market and with a less of an ability to go out and get major free agents on the
You'd
market.
assume so, yeah.
Yeah. Teams like that can quickly, I mean, both these teams were in the lottery 2 years ago, and now they're in the NBA Finals. Things can, first of all, turn very quickly, but you don't need, I mean, the Thunder obviously have SGA and the MVP, but that's what makes them so unbelievably good, right? But all you need is to hit on your draft picks, make one good trade for a very good player. I think the Ringer just had out that Halliburton's ranked top 10 now after
Which is
all
so
that's happened, which is
stupid.
it reeks of recency bias to put him
Oh,
that high.
unbelievably so.
But
I mean, that's like the cool thing. It's cool that he's not a top 10 player and they're in the finals.
That's awesome.
You don't need to BS it to be like, actually, he's better than, I don't know. They have him above Tatum.
Yeah, I think it's a great sign for the Blazers, who everyone clamors that we need this 1A superstar player or we're not going to get anywhere, right? And
Absolutely.
Everyone believes that player is not on our roster right now. And I would guarantee you that we'll go as far as 2 years back. People would say, no one in the league would say Halliburton is a good enough player to take you to the NBA Finals, or that Pascal Siakam, because I think there's arguments that, I mean, he won the Eastern Conference Finals award, right?
Yeah, they're 1A and 1B. There's not, yeah.
No one would tell you that either of those players are good enough to take a team to the NBA Finals. And yes, the Pacers are an absolute heater of a run, but I just think it goes to show that it's so much more important today in the NBA to have a deep, cohesive team of players that all are very good and then hope one kind of takes a big leap rather than have this superstar player that'll just everyone gets on their back and takes you all the way, right?
Yeah, you're 1,000% right. It's roster construction and committing to an identity. That's what it is. And that's why, that's why I'm so excited about the Blazers' future, is it feels like right now being the best at what you're good at can carry you so much farther than just, on paper talent, which is a pretty big change for the modern NBA. That's what makes me so excited for the Blazers, because I feel like the last season was us finally finding an identity,
right,
as a way for Blazer fans to feel hopeful. Compare the Phoenix Suns to the Indiana Pacers.
Yeah.
A team that is star-powered filled with zero identity versus a team that's, is deep and cohesive and has a very obvious style of play and identity that they are fully bought in and committed to. That's what we need to lean into, not star power, but leaning into that.
So with all that in mind, I think this offseason, it's the first of, and I think a couple of what are going to be pivotal in defining who those players are going to be for the long term to continue that identity and to be the basically core of this team. I think you and I have a handful in mind that are for sure, that we know, and I think most people would agree. I think our baseline for that is maybe a little bit higher than other people's, and there's some players that fall into a potentially category. I think you and I have some players that we know for sure are not going to be a part of it, and maybe some people would think they fall into the maybe. I think for the most part, everyone's going to kind of understand our thoughts, but I'll start it off. I think we know and to me, he's a lot higher of a centerpiece than I think people agree, but Denny, who was just ranked as the best player on the Blazers by the Ringer by a decent margin.
61st? Was that what it was?
61st best player in the league. Denny, clear-cut, core of this future, and I think basically a pillar, a building block to kind of a focal point of this team to build around. Wouldn't you say?
100,000%. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Because what's cool about watching the finals is, a still up and coming and, I guess you'd use the word rebuilding. We're still rebuilding.
Yeah.
But you watch these playoff series, you watch the finals, it gives a better idea of what really is the type of talent that is going to be on a championship team. Because you look at the Pacers and they, Jarris Walker's a talented guy. Matherin's a really talented guy. Guys who would be getting heavy minutes on the Blazers right now, I would assume. And they're getting, anywhere from 0 to 16, 20 minutes a game at most.
Yeah.
It gives a lot better of an idea. It's like, okay, as much as I love this young guy, as much as I see the potential of this guy, who realistically can we say for sure could be on these teams either right now or in the future and make a serious impact on a team contending for a title? Denny is absolutely number one on that list. You watch Denny and he would fit in so well with that Pacers team. I mean, he would be awesome on that Pacers team. He would be, I'd see him as arguably he'd be, if 1A and 1B are Halliburton and Siakam, he would be like a borderline 1C. I also kind of think he's better than Siakam.
I think he's could totally get to a Siakam type role on a team where it's maybe not on every single night and it's not running through him all of the time.
Sure.
But he's such a valuable extension of an offense and a defense, and he's so fast in transition that he's getting you those easy buckets. I honestly, now that we're talking about this more, I really see a lot of similarities between those two players.
Yeah, 100%. Me too. And that's the thing. It's like we're again looking at guys who are fitting and would be able to commit to the identity that we're clearly trying to build.
Yeah.
And Denny is one of the two guys who you're like, oh, that is the prime example of what we are trying to build in Portland. High hustle, high intensity, push the ball, play fast, play aggressively, be the team that guys hate to play on defense and will blow past you in offense and get points in transition, getting at the basket. Another guy who I think fits that, he's going to be on, if the Blazers become a contending team, there's no way he's not a big piece of that. And that's Tumani. We said we see Denny in Siakam. I see Tumani in Alex Caruso, which
I think is going to rub some people the wrong way.
I think it will too. And I don't think it should, because Caruso has been a key, integral part, not of just of this most likely incoming championship, I think, for the Thunder.
Yeah.
But for a championship team 4 years ago with the Lakers. I see Tumani as being an incredibly important 25-minute per game player. Because, and again, that's not an insult. Yeah. But to expect, because here's the thing, who else would he be on these teams? I mean, the guy you could make like physically the comparison to is
Dort.
I was going to say Jalen Williams.
To me, he reminds me more of their Dort, and you're kind of hoping that 3-point shot just keeps getting better and better. I honestly can see Tumani having more off the ball creation than Dort eventually. I don't think it's going to be great, but I personally
disagree with that.
I do see him getting around to a little bit more. I think he's trying more things, and maybe that's just because it's against worse teams where he's able to pull it off, and he has the long leash for that stuff. But at the bare minimum for me, that's what he is to us.
The bare minimum is Caruso?
Yeah. I
think that'd be a really nice peak for him.
Well, let me say it. Like, if we're going to the finals, if we're becoming a really good team, I think his minimum role, I think it would be the minimum role he would play in that is him being in that Caruso. So many other things would have to go right for Tumani to be playing that role and us be going as far as the finals. Do you know what I mean? Like, well, that's everyone else would have to hit. I think the other path for us to get that far on the back of Tumani is that his offensive game comes around a bit more. It opens up into sort of like a Nesmith type player, and then the 3-point shot obviously just starts to get better and better, and he becomes like Nesmith, a 40% 3-point shooter. So he's a offensive threat while also being out there on defense, hounding someone for 35 minutes a night, right?
Well, that's the thing, dude, is like what's so interesting about Tumani is it's a guy who I'm sure would be a huge part of this a championship Blazers team, but I am not for sure if it would be in a starting role. Because I see the Lou Dort comparison. I think Lou Dort is a much better offensive player than Tumani is. And here's what's tough, dude, is that Tumani I mean,
Dort doesn't ever score a 2-point field goal.
yeah, but if we need Tumani to score 2-point field goals when we're actually really good, I think something's kind of wrong.
I think
Tumani is in the same situation that Lou Dort was in 3 years ago, and even though it was also at not very good shooting percentages, he was putting up 17 a game. Tumani had the role Lou Dort did 3 or 4 years ago, and he put up 10 points per game on 35% shooting on even easier shooting attempts. If we become a really good team, could he be what Lou Dort is now? Maybe, but is Tumani going to be able to shoot 41% from 3 at his peak? I personally don't think so, because at 24 right now, which is how much younger? He's about a year and a half younger than Dort.
I think there's ways Tumani can get better. I'm not going to lock him into he should be that Alex Caruso role. I'm hoping there's better outcomes. But I do agree that he has shown enough to at least be a 25-minute per game defensive stalwart on a really good team.
Well, here's the other thing about Tumani offensively. Really, people focus so much on just like the 3-point shot. You can't just have a good 3-point shot. You have to have those intangibles. And Tumani is still a lot of the time really awkward offensively. Other than offensive rebounding, I don't think Tumani really has a consistent skill offensively still, which of course he's in his second year. He's 24. He's still super young. He still has a lot of time to grow. But Dort is a good offensive player, not just because he can make an open three. It's because of the intangibles that he has otherwise on that end. It's the difference between being a guy who could lead a team to 41 wins and being a guy who could be integral part of a championship team.
Yeah.
I think Tumani could start and play 40 minutes a game and be the second or third most important part of a 41-win team. Yeah. But when we get to that when that's a good thing. That's why we were so good in the second half of the season, was because of Tumani and Denny, the two of them. So he's showing that he can be that kind of player that can get a team to a play-in type position as a starter. But is he the type of guy who could be that important on a championship team? I mean, I just really, really don't think so. But I think he could be an insanely important part of a championship team in a lesser role like Caruso is doing right now.
So we know Tumani's going to be in there. We know Tumani's a core part of this team. I think that Klingon is a core part of this team and can become a successful part of us getting to the finals. Because I don't think there's a world where we can do what we're trying to do, like you and I have talked about so much, of be a havoc-wrecking team without a league-leading paint protector who can deter everyone away from the rim on his own. And
yes.
That's what Klingon is. If Klingon isn't good enough for us, and the offensive struggles I'll mention in just a second, but if he's not good enough to be that defensive anchor, that Gobert for us, then I think it kind of all falls apart. And to me, I really think Rudy is a lot closer to his floor than I think most people would think right now.
Rudy is?
I think Rudy as Klingon's floor, it's not, I think.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Rather than his ceiling, right? Because I think they're very, very comparable players. I think is like him turning into Rudy Gobert is pretty realistic. And I think that Klingon has way more offensive potential because Rudy's offense is pretty much non-existent at a lot of times, right? Unless they're playing the Lakers without a center.
Yeah, I 1,000%. I keep saying 1,000, 10,000, but I really do. I couldn't agree with you more. That I'm not sure if people fully realize how important it is for Klingon to get really, really good. And I think the really exciting part is that he's shown in his rookie year that there is just gobs of potential. He's the key piece that needs to pan out for this to become a really, really good team. And I think people look at Shaden, they look at Scoot, and they're like, oh, those are the guys who really need to get good for us to become a great team. I think it's Klingon. And I also think he's the most sure thing of those guys to reach that level. because he showed that in his rookie year. He made an awesome impact while still leaving so much to be desired, which is what you want from a rookie or a young guy. What I love about Klingon that's so different than Gobert is that Gobert clearly has no interest and never has really of doing much offensively.
Yeah.
It's just like clearly not something he's all that comfortable with or wants to do. You watch Klingon and he clearly struggles, but he wants to be a guy who can hit a spot up three. He wants to be a guy who can play as a role man. And most of that doesn't have to do with his finishing ability. It has to do with his just insane screen setting and how he's able to create plays off of that. It's not because he has great touch around the rim, because clearly he does not.
Yeah.
But I think he will. He's a guy who does not seem afraid to put shots up around the rim. I don't see him chickening out. It's just that he just doesn't have that touch yet.
And I think it'll come around. I think it was just I honestly truly believe it was just a first year thing. It was a kind of yips type thing. Like he had that touch in college. Once he knew he was the man on those Hurley teams, he was blossoming, and he wasn't scoring a ton, but it wasn't looking like it did with us.
I think he is the biggest going forward of our young guys. If all of our young guys reach their potential they want them to, I think Klingon's impact is the greatest. And I think it's the most realistic of all of our young guys, which is awesome. I'm excited.
I like that a lot. Below that line of, we're sure these are players that we can trust to invest in, I think it is kind of the way we're...
Yeah, because Denny and Chimani are like, those are guys who could make an impact now in the finals. Klingon's like, we know he will make a huge impact years from now. Now we're on to like, we're not sure if they would now, and we're not sure if they will, but they could. Yeah. Right? Is that how you're seeing it?
And to me, the 3 players to put in that bin, and the only 3 players to put in that bin, it's our 3-headed dragon of...
Yes.
It's kind of like, the dragon meme where they're all where there's the one with the loopy eyes, and then there's the 2 that they all kind of have the loopy eyes. Anthony, Shaedon, and Scoot, to me, kind of have an equal chance of popping out and turning into a really good... And Anthony's a little farther along, I understand, but I think Anthony's a lot closer to a player that can be valuable on a winning team than the other 2 are. And there's going to be a ton of pushback on that one, too. But I know Shaedon and Scoot's potential is higher. To me, they both have such glaring flaws that I'm not sure if they can fix. It's Shaedon's defensive limitations and kind of from a mental standpoint in that regard.
And his shooting limitations, too.
And I'll go 3-point shooting specific limitations. Mm-hmm. Those are 2 huge glaring things that just get you played off of the court in a first round playoff series.
Yeah.
And Scoot,
let alone the finals in a first round series.
In a first round series, you're getting played off the court if you play defense like Shaedon has, and if you shoot the 3 ball like Shaedon has at such high volume. The other one is Scoot, kind of in the same 3-point shooting mentality, but more so just like turnovers, inability to handle pressure and good opposing defenses, inability to adapt. It's just he's clearly not mentally ready to handle a 7-game series right now, and he would get played off the court. He would play himself off the court in that regard, rather than I think him getting schemed out like Shaedon would right now. Those 3, that's the way I see them, and I see them all equally right now.
And I think a lot of people are going to hear that and say, like, come on, you're being like too hard on them. They're so young. But the Thunder are also incredibly young. And that's why I was saying earlier, it's important to, watch these finals. It gives a more realistic understanding of context of where our young guys really are at compared to a team like the Thunder. And obviously the Thunder are the best team in the league. They're kind of one of one. They give a better understanding of what truly great young guys should look like. You look at the Pacers, and the best comparison for Shaedon in the entire league is Mathurin, and it has been since literally draft day.
Yeah.
He's a guy who went right 6th, and we took Shaedon at 7th.
Yeah.
And they're pretty similar players, and I would make the argument that over this season, Mathurin has been a better player than Shaedon. Some people might disagree with that. I think Mathurin overall has been better, and they're pretty similar players, and he's had so far a better career than Shaedon in his first 3 years. And he's getting, he's averaging 16 minutes a game in the playoffs. By every way measurable, he's a better shooter and a better defender. So you watch Shaedon, you're obviously, those finishing skills are unbelievable. He's an amazing finisher, with a solid mid-range game who can't shoot. Statistically, right now, the worst shooter in the NBA, given his shot attempts from three, on a pretty average to easy shot quality. So he's not taking these really hard shots, which I've seen some people argue like, oh, Shaedon shoots bad because he takes such difficult shots. That's not really true. He's league average in shot quality. So you think of Shaedon, you're like, right now he probably would be getting the same to less minutes that Mathurin is getting. I'm sure, Mathurin himself was thinking this about himself. Like, how do I become the kind of player that can become a guy who can play in the NBA finals? And for Shaedon to do that, he'd have to be an impactful defender. I still think it's possible because in the playoffs, you see how it's very important, especially in the end of the game, guys who can create shots on their own. That's just something Shaedon can do. He's a guy who can get to the rim and finish beautifully. I just haven't seen yet if he's able to do that with playoff level defense. We won't know that until he makes the playoffs. I think he totally could, but I'm not sure if he's going to even be able to be put in that position unless he drastically improves his shooting and drastically improves his defense. But if he does do those two things, there's a guy who's an awesome member of our future core. If he doesn't, he's in the same situation Mathurin is in, except probably worse and probably for longer.
It's nicer with Shaedon because you can see that if the three ball starts to go in, he's going to be a really, really scary offensive player.
Yeah.
And he has the defensive insulation around him, at the least with Tumani, Denny, and Klingon backing him up, that he doesn't have to get that much better on defense. He just has to not be a negative defender. And that makes his path to there a lot easier. So both those things are very attainable, and there's all the counter arguments like he hasn't played that much basketball, he is young. It all makes sense, and we're not saying we don't believe in Shaedon. I actually think the second half of the year was very promising and very encouraging.
Shaedon, I could see it truly as a 50-50 flip. I think it's 50-50. He realizes those things and he's able to become a shooter, which expands his offensive game to being a real threat. Because right now in the playoffs, teams would just clog the paint, clog the mid-range. You'd kind of get wrecked, I think, offensively, especially because he's still so slim. But in the future, if he develops that shot, that's a guy who's now a really important offensive piece. The defense, like you said, I agree with you that we could hide him defensively. That again plays in like we would need Klingon to realize his potential as an all-NBA defender.
He needs to get better to be able to hide him. Right now, he would get played off the court.
I 100% agree with
that. But he can get good enough reasonably to be not a problem. And I think again, like everyone's talking about it now, like it's not about as much who your best player is, it's who your worst player is. And
yes,
with someone like Shaedon whose flaws are so glaringly big, it begs the question, like his extension, people are talking about his extension this summer, and the two options are basically give him, a full big 4 or 5 year extension at a certain price point. I think most players who kind of are locked in starters are getting like $35 million a year right now. I'm super not comfortable with giving Shaedon that amount of money. And to me, I'm not even fully comfortable giving him an extension right now. And I might be down to roll the dice on restricted free agency, where like if he does pop next year, then maybe we have to fight off some suitors. But I think one more year of watching him and really putting him under a microscope is what we need, rather than taking a gamble on getting him a little bit cheaper this year. Because again, like we've been saying, if there's one player who you're pot committed to that isn't working, I think you're fucked.
Yeah.
You can't be missing on a singular good player anymore to make it to the finals. The Pacers, the most underrated part about them is their cap sheet is clean, and all of these players are contributing in ways, and none of them are detracting from what they're doing. So you have to be sure, and I would rather call it quits on a number 7 or a number 3 draft pick that we missed on and not lock ourselves into them and have them be a bad player than try to get a deal on them and then hope they pop when they're not going to, if that makes sense.
What's so weird is I probably would be okay with just throwing him a big contract right now, just because what's so weird about Shaedon is how it's a coin flip, but the two sides of the coin to me are so wildly different. With his style of play, there's not that many 6'6" guys who are great finishers, and that's kind of it, and they're able to be okay players. It's either they develop that game to being a three-way scorer who's also a solid defender, and all of a sudden you're an all-star type player, or you don't develop either of those and you're played off the court. You look at Scoot and you think, his style of play is a guy who could be, um, just okay and be an impactful player, I think. And it's kind of the opposite. It's like, I don't think Scoot's ever going to be a multi-time All-Star. I think Shaden could.
Yeah.
If things work out perfectly, Shaden could. I don't think that's going to happen for Scoot because there's so many things he would have to master. He doesn't have one skill set like Shaden does with this finishing ability that you can be like, oh, he's truly elite at that, and that's going to be an integral part to an all-star type player.
Yeah.
I see Scoot as if he's going to be a part of a championship team, he's going to be people aren't going to like this dude. I see him as being closer to like a TJ McConnell, who I love and have always loved TJ McConnell. I think he could be a better TJ McConnell.
Yeah.
I think he's a guy who is so high intensity on defense, even though he's not good really yet, which I know is going to be weird for people to hear, but we are still statistically worse with Scoot on the floor defensively. Even though I think he plays in a way you're just like so hopeful that like, oh, he's so aggressive. He's trying so hard. He's such a great hustle player that's going to pan out, which I really think it will. But like you said, he still plays so out of control. His athleticism is not what we hoped it would be. His shooting had a few weeks where it looked great, but by the end of the season, he was back to shooting like 31%. It did start to feel a little bit fluky, but his intensity defensively, his hustle, it's a guy that's like, oh, like he could be like a TJ McConnell type of player at worst. And at best, I still see him as being kind of like a Jeff Teague type of player. But I still think he's a guy worth keeping around because I think his intensity defensively and his just intensity in general on both ends of the floor, that's a kind of guy you want.
Yeah. Yeah. He's got the dog in him. He wants it. He's going to play hard. I saw the Jeff Teague comparison the other day, and
I've been saying that forever. I was kind of mad when I saw that because I was like, "That's my line."
Yeah, the stats behind that are really promising too, and this would kind of be the make or break year if you're going to subscribe to that, which I'm down for. I think everyone can see how it can bottom out. It's a little bit harder to see where it can get really good, but I think I agree with you that the skills that he does have, his passing ability, his ranginess. He's quick on his feet. I think those all can get his floor pretty high. He just has to kind of put it all together mentally, and I think it'll click. It's not that unreasonable at all to see him being a solid to good role player on a really good team. It's just hard to see him commanding the offense. So I think those three guys, we're unsure if they can become very much positive winning players, but
it's totally possible.
But it's totally possible, and we'll throw Anthony in there because we've already seen what he is. It's
1,000%. I just worry that I look at him like, is his role in a championship team Isaiah Joe? You know what I mean? But I think he's such a better three-way level scorer than that I think at worst he's Isaiah Joe, which is still an important part of a guy who can come in and drain threes.
Yeah.
And at best, I still believe in Ant. He's young. He's shown that. I still don't think he's been able to work in an offense where he doesn't have just constant all-day pressure on him, which is why he statistically has the hardest shot selection in the entire NBA, which is he deserves some of the blame for that because he's not that impressive of an off-ball player of trying to get himself open shots. But we don't really run much of an offense that allows him to get that many open shots off ball, which is, again, why I think Klingon is so important. And in the future, will open up the game so much for Ant because he's the type of guy that will do that. Yeah, that's why I still believe in Ant. I still think he could be an important part. But he's the kind of guy who I think this is where it gets tough with Shaden because a championship team can't hide both Shaden and Ant.
No, I think there's you have to go one way or the other with them, and I know the fans are all unanimously going to agree let's put the resources into Shaden over Ant, and I think there's definitely a world where we could regret that, but I
think there's a big world where we could regret that.
But you see, you kind of have to take your risks, and Shaden is a risk worth taking for sure. So
I still think this is all three of those guys this season to show, and it sucks that we didn't know after this season.
Yeah, because it felt like last season was the season, but now
we still don't know. It's not like we watch and we know for sure. A lot of guys would say we know for sure that Ant isn't. I completely disagree.
Below that, I don't think there's. I mean, you might have a differing opinion on Matisse, maybe, but I think below that, you've got guys that play a niche role. And have
guys who are very easily replaceable.
I think Robert Williams can totally be a great piece on a team.
Of course,
but I think, when you're talking about his health, you can't reliably expect him to be there. And I think he's probably worth more as an asset to another team he wants to take a gamble than for us to willingly rely on him. What do you think about Matisse in this context?
It's tough because I mean he's such an amazing defender. Maybe he's the Alex Caruso of this team.
Yeah.
Maybe you're 100% right. Maybe Tumani's the Lou Dort, which I actually like that. Yeah, Lou Dort is, and then Matisse is the Alex Caruso of it. But I love Matisse, but he's another guy who it's like, is he ever going to be able to be good enough offensively? Like, could he ever even be Alex Caruso level offensively? I think he could be, but I don't know. He's a guy who we could talk about him, but he's not. I don't think he's going to be the difference maker between us being a great team or not. He could be a guy, though, that accentuates a great team.
Yeah, he could, if he really steps off his offensive game to being somewhat of a threat, which would be really stepping it up for him, unfortunately, then he could be the 10 to 12 minute a guy on a really good team. There's also Jeremy, which I think what Jeremy was 2 years ago, or was, I'll say, at the peak of Jeremy over these past 2 years, which was hitting threes at a 40% clip, putting up 18 points a game. And then if he kind of mixed it in, I don't think he was playing as good as defense as he was for that one stretch in the middle of this year, last year. But if you combine those two, that's a really good role player. The reason I'm out on Jeremy is because, one, at his price point, we can't win with him on the roster. He's taking up too much space in that regard. But the other is that, on the north side of 31, and I think kind of just with his play style, I don't want to be mean here, but maybe lack of drive. I don't know if he's really the hardest working guy in the gym these days.
Sure.
I see what happened towards the end of last year as closer to a sign of him beginning to fall off. I'm not saying he's going to be totally ass next year. I think you and I are much, much higher on what Jeremy is as a player right now than most people. I don't see him getting back to his peak in 2 years when we're ready to go. So I don't see him there.
He's not part of the core of a championship team for the Blazers. I think we can 100% agree on that. But he could be a veteran Jeremy Grant in a couple of years who plays 20 minutes a game, or even hopefully next year. That's a cool player.
And I think it has to happen. I don't really know where Chauncey can find the time otherwise. I'm really excited to see him in a 20, 25-minute off the bench role.
Me too.
Because I think that can make our bench really good. If you get a Jeremy Grant that's playing well off the bench, you're a pretty good team.
Absolutely. That's the thing. That's why I want him to be – he's replaceable. I want him to be replaced, but not to leave, but to become a 20-minute per game guy.
Yeah.
That would be awesome.
Yeah. And then I think the last one that we –
No, I think that's it.
just gloss over the
We're like guys
man.
that we don't hate.
Yeah. Ayton maybe has his own tier in our eyes, and we will likely over this offseason address Ayton in a longer context and kind of do a reminder video. But Ayton is not only someone you can't play. Ayton is someone that if the Phoenix Suns hadn't matched DeAndre Ayton's offer sheet way back when the Indiana Pacers offered it to him, the Indiana Pacers, I will say, would have never made the Eastern Conference Finals.
I 1,000% agree. And people, for some reason right now, are going to be mad about that. The way he's been able to brainwash so many. And I said when he got hurt that one game, I thought, oh, man, people are going to remember him fondly for some reason.
Yeah.
And during the offseason,
just
they absolutely have.
Came off a win streak when he was playing well.
And people are going to say, oh, but he was already a good player on a finals team. He was a good player on a finals team 5 years ago with still basically prime Chris Paul on that team, who I could play if I could play as a pick and roll center with Chris Paul and honestly look okay as 5'9", 150. And even then, even the next season when he's still like Chris Paul, he was benched for Jock Landale.
Yeah.
Jock Landale. I mean, we can look at that 1 month playoff run from 5 years ago as much as we want. That's not the player that Ayton has shown himself to be in his career. If Clingan is as important to this team as we think he is, which he absolutely is, there is not a world where we win a championship or we're a contender where Ayton's the guy, but Clingan isn't.
Yeah.
We've seen Ayton at his peak, and with Ayton, we had one of the worst defenses in the NBA. He's statistically one of the worst rim protectors in the NBA. We know he's one of the worst screen setters in the NBA. I understand that he had a few nice games before he went down in that 10-game streak, But I want everyone to look back at those games and really look at how he played. He had a couple really good games against the Suns. I was at one of them. It was awesome. He played great. But if we're going to get tricked by Ayton, like he's been tricking people for the last 7 years of his career, it's not going to. You can like Ayton too as a player. If you like Ayton as a player, that's fine. You can't seriously think that you can't seriously think, even if you like Ayton, that's fine. I see why people like Ayton. He's a good rebounder with amazing touch around the rim. He's one of the best mid-range shooting bigs ever. But there's not a world where he not Klingon is the big man on a Blazers championship team. If you want Scoot to develop offensively, if you want Shaden to develop offensively, they need an A plus tier screener like Klingon to do it, and not a bottom of the barrel screener like Ayton. But if you're so willing to give up Ant to clear the way for Scoot, you should be 10 times more willing to clear the way for Klingon by giving up Ayton.
Yeah.
Because Klingon's already shown he has more of a guaranteed impact on the game right now, and has shown that he's probably going to have a bigger impact on the team in the future.
I think the biggest litmus test for my personal view of Chauncey at the start of the season, but I just think in general, if he how good is his pulse on this team, is if he starts Klingon over Ayton day one. If Chauncey does that day one, I will be over the moon. I will feel like the hire was amazing, and I will feel like we're heading in the right direction. If Ayton is still starting on day one, and it's a big ask to put Chauncey over Ayton, or to put Klingon over, for Chauncey to put Klingon over Ayton. But if he has the balls to do it, and if he can figure out a way to make it work, and you've got 28 minutes of Klingon starting block with the starters, and then Ayton coming off the bench, I think is honestly good. I think you've got a guy who can rebound like that and shoot like that.
Sure.
Coming off the bench, playing 20 minutes a night. He just has to play hard for those 20 minutes.
But that will never, ever happen.
It's the
That's
dream.
what's cool with Jeremy. I think it totally could. With Ayton, that will never happen.
I know. But I don't think we're going to. I just kind of think we're going to be wasting time playing Ayton with the starting lineup and playing Klingon with the bench lineup when we really could just be starting Klingon and just finding a way to make it work for Ayton. But obviously he's not going to subscribe to that because he needs to make his money after this season. So
especially when Klingon's biggest issue is being able to play for long periods of time.
Yeah.
Do you want to work Klingon into shape 3 years from now, or do you want to do it now? I want to do it now. The teams are in the finals right now. Like we've talked about, it gives a more realistic expectation of what we can hope for going forward with this team, with what our core is, what we think our core is. And so, to sum it up, I think we can unquestionably say Denny and 2 are going to be huge pieces of that. We think Klingon absolutely could be and will be, even if he might not be right now. He's going to be just as important as those guys and a huge piece of the teams going forward. And Shaden, Scoot, they're big time coin flips where they could be super important parts of this team, or they could be guys that were like, oh, they didn't develop this, they didn't develop that, didn't quite work out. And then we have
the rest
guys
of the
like
team.
then we have the rest of the team. We have Ayton, who we don't think is a part of it. We think Jeremy, who we don't think is part of the core, but could be part of hopefully a backup veteran role sometime in the hopefully near future. And then we have other guys who I think we think are basically, even if we like him, because we like Jabari, we like even Matisse a lot, but they're replaceable. They're not guys who are going to be the difference makers on us being a championship team or not. But even if we like them, that's kind of what kind of players they are.
All of our thoughts on this are with the NBA Finals in mind, and we all agree, a very long road to go to that. There's plenty of room for a couple of guys to take a half step up and us be, in my eyes, a low-tier playoff team.
Absolutely.
We are not far away from making a big step next year.
Well, that's what's so cool about this team is that because of those coin flips of those guys, if they flip the right way, and we know Denny, Tumani, those guys are going to be huge parts. We know Klingon's going to be a huge part. If Shaden works out, if Ant works out, and if Scoot works out, that is 100% to me the core of a really, really good team.
And it just has to be two of the three, because I don't even think all three of them can really work out and take time. But you just need, if it's coin flips, we're looking at, we've got a 25% chance of two of those guys taking another step this year, commanding
Yeah.
the team, and then we kind of let go of the other one.
Which to me sounds about right.
Yeah. So
25% for the two of those guys to work out sounds about right.
yeah. So
But to me, that's hopeful. That's like
Great
pretty high
odds.
for the NBA.
Great
For professional
odds.
sports, that's pretty high.
yeah.
And we still have hopefully a really good draft pick we're about to get. And we still have awesome picks in the future looking forward. So the core of Denny, Tu, and Klingon, that alone, with how much flexibility we have with our picks, with our assets in the future, we're looking good.
Well, thank you guys for listening. We are 3 weeks away from the draft. Big night. We'll see what starts to happen. I think this offseason could be a ton of really interesting news for the Blazers, or nothing could happen. I don't think anyone really knows. So stay tuned with us. We'll do our best to keep you updated as quick as we can with our fiery hot takes.
Yeah.
And we'll just keep on thinking about the Blazers all day long. So that's seemingly all I do with these days.
Well, the Blazers are cool.
The Blazers are cool, so it's really cool to be thinking about them all the
Yeah.
time. Don't let anyone tell you that it's not cool to think about the Blazers all
Yeah.
the time. Appreciate you guys. Hit a like if you haven't. Hit a subscribe if you really haven't. And leave us a comment if you think we're completely wrong on any of the players, or if we're totally right and we just laid out the team perfectly. So we appreciate y'all.